Part 45. Corn seeds have been found, so my people never starvation. My prince, according to your instructions, we have also collected a lot of seeds during this trip. But I don't know if there are any that the prince can use. Speaking of the task given by the prince, in addition to the exchange of good horses, we also asked them to collect seeds from the western regions. Seeds, this is also the top priority that the prince said, so Bua Tan did not dare to take it lightly, but did his best to collect a lot of seeds. Ming Yu almost forgot about this. After Bua Tan reminded him, he patted his forehead and said happily, "Really? Come and take a look at this, prince." Bua Tan hurriedly had a small wooden box carried, came in, opened it in front of Ming Yu, and through the bright light, Ming Yu saw a lot of seeds that he did not know. Ming Yu reached out and grabbed a handful, full of joy in his heart. All he knew were walnut, flax, and broad bean seeds. These are the specialties of the western regions, things that Dayan Country does not have at all. At that time, Ming Yu will plant them, and see who will say that they are barren in Liangcheng. Suddenly, a flash of gold flashed in front of Ming Yu's eyes. This is. Ming Yu thought he was dazzled, and quickly found out the golden yellow that had just been allocated, not many. Just a dozen or so. Ming Yu held it in the palm of his hand carefully, looking at this very common and familiar thing in later generations. His voice trembled. How did this seed come from? Bua Tan was stunned for a moment, looked carefully, and found nothing, so he shook his head a little dazedly. He is not in charge of all these seeds. He just releases the tasks, and the people below will pay attention to collect them when they go out, and give them to him for safekeeping when they come back. Otherwise, he would have to deal with transactions and exchange horses by himself. He would do everything by himself, and he couldn't do much if he was exhausted. Bua Tan was a little ashamed. My prince, why don't the villain ask someone to ask? The seeds collected here in the western regions are both numerous and mixed, many of which the villain has never seen before. Ming Yu nodded. And he was already sure that this thing was originated in Central and South America, called corn, also known as maize. In the Compendium of Materia Medica, there was also the phrase, maize is planted in the West. Ming Yu originally thought that this thing would be hard to see in his life, but he didn't expect to see it again today. How could it not be gratifying? You must know that corn has strong resistance to cold, drought and barrenness. It has strong environmental adaptability and high output. It can not only be used as food, but also as feed. With it, people will not be afraid of starvation. Bua Tan brought someone over, but the man was confused. He received so many seeds. Where did he know them all? But when he saw the golden seeds in Ming Yu's hand, he thought for a long time before saying, "This is a bit of an image, but my subordinates can't remember exactly. I heard that the man said that he had to come west when he met one. It's impossible to verify who it came from, and where it came from." Ming Yu was actually just curious. He never thought that this thing would fall into his hands. As for why the seeds of America would go to the western regions, it just happened to appear here. And Ming Yu didn't want to do too much research, and there was no way to verify it. But since it fell into his hands, let this thing flourish in his hands and give full play to its proper value. At the very east, let the people of Liangzhou no longer suffer from starvation. My prince, I don't know when the next trip to the western regions will be. When it is confirmed, the villain will be ready. Bua Tan asked. This is the issue that he is most concerned about at present. The prince has said that in the future, there will be a trip to the western regions. There will be more trade in goods, and there will be more countries in the western regions and farther places. Their caravan will be the first example to play a leading role. Their every move will gradually attract attention, and more people will follow suit, driving more caravan trade. When there are many people who leave, under their leadership, they will walk out of an unprecedented Silk Road, which will benefit future generations. The news brought by the caravans from the south to the north will make people no longer blocked, and allow the people of Dayan Country to appreciate the customs of various countries in the western regions. It can also let more people know about the country of Dayan in the east, and learn about the silk, tea, porcelain and many other mysterious and beautiful items in the country. In this way, the mysterious East will attract countless people to come to trade. And there will also be people from Dayan Country who are unwilling to live in the West like Bua Tan to look for opportunities. Liangcheng is a big city on the only road between the East and the West. All kinds of caravans will pass through Liangcheng. It is conceivable that this is a great opportunity for the future development of Liangcheng. And the prosperity of Liangcheng will be just around the corner. Bua Tan has lived in Liangcheng for so many years, and he also has deep feelings for Liangcheng. It will be a glorious and great mission to be able to drive the development of a state city and even the entire Dayan Country by himself. If you are lucky, you may be able to leave a deep impression on future generations in the long history. Bua Tan's eager eyes made Ming Yu embarrassed. They just came back, why did they want to leave again? No matter what, let them rest and relax, and then arrange follow-up matters. It's still too early to mention this. You all came back yesterday, and you are very tired. Reunite with your family and take a break before discussing the next trip to the western regions. Ming Yu persuaded with a smile. Bua Tan also knew that he was a little anxious. Even if he was anxious alone, but the people below had to rest. People are not ironclad. After months of worrying, it is time to relax. He laughed a few times, scratching his head in embarrassment. My prince, if possible, we should arrange it as soon as possible. The western regions are too far and too large, and it will take too much time. The villain is afraid that I will not be able to finish my entire life. Ming Yu somewhat moved. He knew that Bua Tan was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Only fight for the day and night. Live up to the youth. A person should move forward with hard work. Ming Yu stood up and walked over, patted his shoulder, and said with a smile, "Don't worry. It won't take long." What are the western regions? On the west side of the west, there is a wider world, and the boundless sea of hope. There is always one day, we will leave footprints on all the land. Even if we can't do it now, but our descendants will one day realize our dreams. Bua Tan clapped his hands and said with a smile, "What the prince said is that this little man is too impatient. I just wanted to set foot on the rivers and mountains by myself, but I never thought that it was too small to be alone. After people's hard work, future generations will always be able to set foot on a farther and vaster place. I really look forward to that day." Ming Yu was not looking forward to that day like Bua Tan, because he knew that that day would really come. Through the efforts of our ancestors, the accumulation of knowledge passed down from generation to generation will become an irreplaceable wealth. However, now that I can still move, the villain wants to go to more places, or I can record what I see and hear along the way and pass it on to future generations, so that they will not take detours. Bua Tan said expectantly. After listening to Ming Yu's words, he suddenly had an epiphany, had such an idea, and said it without hesitation. Ming Yu also agreed with Bua Tan's idea. It's so good. He even made a few suggestions, which made Bua Tan nodded again and again. Bua Tan was excited, and the person who knew me was Prince Duan. He benefited a lot from this talk. After going back, he had to think about it, sort out all these things, and really use it to realize his ideal. The next day, Ming Yu summoned the peasants who were still in the palace early in the morning. If it wasn't too late yesterday, Qingping persuaded him to rest his mind. He would have summoned the corn seed overnight last night. Master Lu took the lead in salutes, and the prince was so anxious to meet him and didn't know what was going on. He pondered that the watermelon seedlings that the prince liked had been growing well, and there was nothing wrong with it. Is it because of glass? The glass greenhouse thing? They heard from the prince earlier that when a transparent glass is made, all the glazed greenhouses will be replaced with glass greenhouses. I heard that this will provide better lighting and the crops will grow better. They have been farming from generation to generation, and they have always faced the loss and turned their backs to the sky. They are not proficient in the things in the ground, but they are also clear about the growth habits of crops. Water fertilization, they all do according to their own judgment. But after arriving here, I realized that this is actually a university question. What temperature, humidity, lighting, pollination? It is simply a fantasy to say from the prince's mouth. What do these things have to do with farming? The prince has lived in the palace since he was a child. I'm afraid he can't even tell the difference between wheat seedlings and weeds, right? It is not too ridiculous for a person who has never cultivated land to point fingers in front of their group of old farmers. What about the prince? Even the emperor, the lord, can't let the old farmers change their farming methods, right? The prince can't use farming as a child's play. The people regard food as their heaven. If there is no food in the ground, everything is in vain. On the issue of farming, several of them have reached an agreement and must not compromise. However, after the development of the matter, they were deeply slapped in the face. Facts have proved that as long as the temperature and humidity are appropriate, even if the weather is reversed, good crops can be grown. Now they wish that the prince could explain a few more words about photosynthesis, fertilizer and trace elements, and grafting technology, which are things they have never heard of before. It's like a fantasy, but it makes people feel very reasonable. They no longer dare to underestimate the prince. The prince is a man of great wisdom, who was sent by God to save the people of Liangzhou. No matter what, they just need to do as the prince said. Your Highness called me to come here. What is the matter? Lu Lao asked. Ming Yu beckoned to them and motioned for them to go over. A few people didn't know, so they got together. They saw a section of silk cloth with a few golden particles on it. What is this? They didn't know any of them, and they all looked at each other and shook their heads. I don't know what this is. Lu Lao asked suspiciously. Ming Yu was happy and looked at these seeds. His eyes are full of love. This is corn, also known as maize. It has high nutritional value and can be used as a staple food like wheat, and its yield is also very good. It is drought resistant and cold resistant, and has a high survival rate. With it, the people of Liangzhou will not have to go hungry. Several old farmers looked at each other. They didn't know there was such a good thing. If it is really like what the prince said, then the people of Liangzhou will really have a good life. The prince is really knowledgeable and talented. He seems to know more about crop seeds than the old farmers like them. Just like watermelon seeds, it is obviously something that has never appeared in Dayan Country. But the prince knows. Not only knows, but also knows how to grow, and knows the growth habit of this watermelon, as if he was born with knowledge. The thing called corn that appears here now is like a watermelon. No one knows about it in Dayan Country, but the prince knows it in great detail. I don't know where the corn came from. The prince is really capable. Corn? Is this really what the prince said? It can be used as a staple food, easy to survive, and the yield is still high? Lu Lao exclaimed. Ming Yu smiled. It is useless to say anything now. Practice brings out true knowledge. As long as they are planted and everyone can see it with their own eyes, they will know whether what he said is true or false. If this is the case, the people of Liangzhou will be blessed. Lu Lao rubbed his rough hands covered with calluses, and he was full of pride. They must plant this corn to see if it is really as the prince said. Does this thing really save the people from starvation? In short, the addition of a new food crop is a great thing for poor people like them. Ming Yu nodded, wrapped the seeds, and handed them to Master Lu solemnly. This thing is not easy to come by. It came from the far west, and this prince has worked hard to get such a dozen seeds. They are the ones who plant them. Otherwise, if you miss this village, there will be no shop, and you should all understand the importance of these seeds. Everyone's heart froze. They have never seen the prince value something like this, and so on. Seriously ordered, it shows that this thing is indeed very important in the prince's mind. Lu Lao carefully took it, and there were only a dozen seeds in his hands, but they seemed to be very heavy. This was the entrustment of the prince. At this time, they did not know that the prince entrusted not only a few small seeds, but the livelihood of the entire Liangzhou. The prince, the villain, must do their best, but this corn, the villain has never seen, let alone planted. Lu Lao looked at Ming Yu with hope. Since the prince knows it so well, I want to know the habits of this thing in great detail. They have cultivated land for most of their lives, and they are not as good as the prince who has never planted the land for a day. Except for occasionally sighing about the genius of the prince. They can only ask for advice and learn with humility. Actually, this prince is just talking on paper, and has never planted it himself. Ming Yu was a little embarrassed. He had only seen farmers planting in later generations, and probably knew the process. However, Master Lu and the others believed in him. How could the prince go to the ground in person? But even so, didn't the prince still plant watermelons that he had never planted before? Now they have left a lot of watermelon seeds. And they have already planted the next batch. If this continues, it will not be long before the people of Liangzhou can start planting. Under the hopeful gazes of a few people, Ming Yu was still a little stressed, nodded and said, I will sort out the corn planting conditions and growth habits for you. You just need to plant according to your own farming experience. In later generations, corn has been planted for hundreds of years. When it first came in, wasn't it also planted by great farmers and spread and carried forward? There is no reason not to be here, not to mention that he still knows the specific planting conditions. Only then did a few people feel relieved, promised to plant it, and then said goodbye and left.